partnership work with the fivefold ministry in a local church context? And then beyond that, maybe who are your influencers, if you want to comment on that? I know I mentioned Brother Stone King. If you want to talk about him and what he brought to the international church and to your family, I could go for hours on that personally about my life, but if you want to talk about that and then just situate the fivefold ministry in your context.
I'm going to try and touch on that last because I want to say this to us fellow pastors. I've been pastoring now for maybe 20 years this year, and we oversee a few other works. And there were a series of things. I'm a church planner. And there are a series of things that God had to reveal to me in the process of planning a church. He had to develop my understanding of the spiritual aspects and the office of the pastor. We began to seek God when we first started a church. We kept running into barriers and walls and hindrances. And so I decided that I'm going to have to take myself on a spiritual journey and find out what we are missing and what I am missing, even more importantly, as a pastor, so that we can have the revival that we desire. Having people is not necessarily having revival.
Right.
And we as pastors have to understand what has been given to us. The first thing that was revealed to me was that I began to understand that the role of pastor was not just a preacher.
Right.
That the role of pastor was not just having total authority. That I was more of a guardian. And that God was entrusting me.
That's right.
That I would be the proper facilitator of that territory. And that although he wanted things to run through me, that I wasn't supposed to be the end all and be all to what happens in that church. And us as pastors, we are okay with working in our downline with appointing leaders up under us. But that is incomplete because we are also responsible to make sure we have a covering above us. And so when I began to seek God, because I wasn't fulfilled, now we were baptizing people, we were having revival, we were having people come into the church, but there was something missing. I wanted a spiritual atmosphere in our church that was absolutely prophetic. So what I began to do was ask God, I need that. And the Lord spoke to me and said, I am entrusting you with this territory. If you want liberty, you must, now this is something I had never studied to this degree some 20 years ago. He said, you must incorporate the fivefold ministry so that they can assist you and they can cover your blind spots. The ministry is designed with blind spots so that we don't have any gods among us. So I began to go on a journey of trying to fulfill the gaps that God was revealing to me as a pastor. One, I needed an apostolic apostle voice. I needed a prophetic prophecy, a prophet in my life, and that will come in and speak to the church. And I needed an evangelist, and I needed a pastor, which is my bishop. And I needed a teacher that would come in and help us with discovery. And not only was I able to operate in those gifts from time to time, I needed the office to operate to help not only the church, but me. And so God began to add to me and reveal to me the people that needed to be in our church and that needed to cover us in our church. And of course, you all know that Brother Stone King has been so instrumental in our church and how we have developed going forward. We also were so privileged from the very beginning to have Prophet Eli Hernandez in every year in our Dominion Conference in our church. But God also kept adding to us key evangelists and teachers, and my bishop, Robert Henson, who would come in and would oversee and speak to me, not only to our congregation. I would tell them, here's the mic, here's the bishop. But what I found out was we created an atmosphere that was beyond me. We created an atmosphere where we not only were protected, but I was protected. And it was nothing like having a prophet come in and tell the church, lift up your man of God, and then tell the church what God was going to do because of that. Some things, pastors, we cannot say. But it's awesome to have the fivefold ministry because there's a beautiful picture of what God wants to do when we release it. But pastors, we have to be released. We have to release it. We have been entrusted by God to be the facilitators of all things, not the God of all things.
We're going to hear from Professor David Norris. And I cannot tell you how much value he has brought to my life and to our family and to our congregation. And Brother Norris, I would like for you to